Welcome to Go Rhody podcast. Today I'm joined by a special guest. This is breaking news. It's Mike Luciano. He's the beat writer for the Toronto Raptors, also knows a lot about our Go Rhody former star Jeff Dowtin. We've been watching him very closely and hoping that Toronto gives him a regular contract, full-time contract. Correct me if I'm wrong on the verbiage of that.
He was on a two-way contract, and today was the deadline where they could either convert him to a standard NBA contract. Usually the Raptors do a multi-year deal with a bunch of non-guaranteed money that becomes guaranteed after a certain date. That's what a lot of people were expecting, but they had to waive one player to do it to fill up the roster spot, and they did not do it, and I'm not sure why.
I thought the deadline was Sunday.
It was Sunday, but the Raptors set like an internal deadline of today. So they kind of wanted this matter done and dusted before Sunday, and this is the move they made. I don't know why, but they made it.
So there's no chance of Jeff continuing his career with the Raptors.
There's a very outside shot. Like I can remember last year when they had all those COVID replacements, of which Jeff Dowtin kind of bounced around with, I believe, the Warriors and the Magic. They had DJ Wilson for a couple games, and after he went back to the G League, they then signed him to a multi-year contract in the offseason, which basically meant you get to compete for a spot in the preseason, and he didn't end up making it. But I could see that happening, but that's way far down the road, and for the short term, I mean, it doesn't really look very good for Dowtin staying long-term in Toronto.
And the way you wrote and other experts in your article, which was a great article on Dowtin and why he should stay, they should keep him, was basically he's the best solution off the bench as a point guard, and they're putting in guards. Forgive me the name of the players that he's replacing with, but guards that aren't really point guards, and it's hurting them, in your opinion. Can you explain that as well?
It absolutely was. The problem was they had drafted Malachi Flynn and Delano Banton, who were point guards, quote unquote. Banton's a little versatile, but in consecutive years with the hope that one of them would eventually become the Fred VanVleet deputy. And that didn't happen. Now, I know that Toronto has this positionless system where they want guys the same height, and they want to mix and match guys. They have Pascal Siakam bringing the ball up half the time, so it's very fluid. But at a certain point, I think they realized we need more traditional lineups. They've tried Flynn. He'll have his moments, but it didn't work out. Banton, not there offensively. They've even went to just shooting guards like Gary Trent Jr. and Will Barton, which is just not the right way to use them. Finally, they put Dowtin in. And as the Rhode Island fans know, Dowtin has this really great energy when he plays. Like, he always is going 100 miles an hour. Terrific on-ball defender for a guy who's not very muscular. He's kind of lanky, but he'll really pester you. Gets to the rim quickly. Not an amazing shooter, but when you need him to hit open shots, he does. That's really all they needed. They didn't need a guy who was going to have to come in and score 15 points a game off the bench. They have guys who can do that. That's just what they needed from their point guards, and they got it from Jeff Dowtin. So for a while, it almost seemed like a formality. Like, oh yeah, once they convert Dowtin to a professional contract, then he can play in the postseason, because on a two-way contract, he was not eligible to play in the postseason. Now they didn't do that. Now they have no backup point guard going into a win-or-go-home situation. It makes no sense.
Well, I heard that the coach, Nick Nurse, doesn't make the decision. It's made by arguably one of the best GMs in the NBA, but that doesn't mean every decision is the right one. This one, you're stunned, and I'm stunned as well. I can't believe what I'm hearing.
I just put up an article on Raptors Rapture right now, which basically says this shows that there's some sort of disconnect between Nick Nurse and Masai Ujiri. Nick Nurse, of course, has been rumored that he might leave the Raptors at the end of the year. He's been looking at the Rockets. Nick Nurse liked the guy enough to where he played him over 2 Masai Ujiri draft picks. And while I think Ujiri is a fantastic general manager, just in totality, one of his flaws is that he's very loyal to his plan and his guys, and he doesn't deviate from that. So, like, Fred VanVleet is one of his guys, and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby are his guys. So he's going to do everything to promote a team and a plan around those guys. And some of the ways that he's going about surrounding them with talent really doesn't add up because, like, here's the question I have for Masai Ujiri. Why even sign Jeff Dowtin to a contract in the first place? Because the point of these two-way contracts, it's almost like a little like a test run to see if they can handle NBA work, and then they're very easy to get out from under if they don't work out, and then if they do, you can give them a professional contract. That's just how they're used. So why even keep him on this if you basically knew for a while, because I know this decision was not made yesterday, you pretty much know for a little bit that this was not going to be a guy you were going to sign long-term. So why even do it in the first place? And why sign Joe Wieskamp to a multi-year deal when he hasn't played a minute outside of garbage time in like a month and a half?
Yeah. And why sign him? Because he's playing out of his flipping mind in the G League, dominating. Offensively, too, in that case. Maybe it's a little different in the NBA, but you also like his defense, and it's important to have someone who plays solid defense, especially in the playoffs. And so I was reading closely what you were talking about. There is no route whatsoever for Jeff Dowtin Jr. to be playing in the playoffs for the Toronto Raptors. They closed that door.
They closed that door.
Okay.
Unless they decide immediately to change course and cut a guy and give him a contract where he can play in the playoffs, which doesn't seem like a thing they're going to do. So, but yeah. The good thing, though, for the Rhode Island people looking for Dowtin to latch on somewhere, at the very least, he has proved that he is an NBA player. Mm-hmm. Now, I know he came in a little late. I believe he's 26. This stint at least showed he can handle a limited role. He's not going to be an all-star, but a limited role on the bench for a good team or an okay team. He proved that on his two-way deal. I don't know why the Raptors are going to let somebody else benefit from it, though. That's what's confusing to me.
Yeah. Now, I also read that there may be some other team that picks him up for the playoffs. Maybe the Celtics.
Could see it. I could see it. It'd be kind of tough because you would have film on Jeff Dowtin, but you'd essentially have to rejigger your rotation very quickly right before the postseason. Now, I don't even know if Dowtin would be a postseason rotation piece because, your rotation's shortened. You're pretty much only playing 8 or 9 guys. I don't even know if he would have been a playoff piece for the Raptors, technically, because of how they're going to shorten stuff. But the fact that they just so flippantly got rid of him is, I think, the biggest problem, because it's not like he's owed a bajillion dollars where he's going to hurt the team financially. Good, solid young player that was developed internally, which the Raptors always preach. They always develop their internal guys. Siakam, Van Vliet, they love that, especially because they can't get free agents very often in Toronto because of the market challenges. So this is a guy, this guy Dowtin has been like a perfect shining example of what the Raptors want to do. Comes in, works from Summer League, works his tail off, gets in the rotation, and they go, oh, never mind. Yeah, thanks for your services. Goodbye.
Well, he's a Dan Hurley disciple, and Dan Hurley only likes one player, a player that works hard all the time. And that's part of all the players' DNA, including Jeff Dowtin. So he's just doing what he's known he could do in college, and he was a very smart person to latch onto. But like you said, it's puzzling now that that's the case, and we always like to think that there's still a little more of area where he can improve and make an even more basically more of a role than just being someone to come off the bench. But better than I, you evaluate the talent, and even if that's the case, then that's still a nice career for Jeff.
There's definitely a path where he could have a larger role in the NBA. It's tough also with the Raptors because they have so many mouths to feed that, if you play 9 minutes a game or 10 minutes a game as the backup point guard and you're chucking up 6 shots, that's going to be a bad look. So that's going to be where he needs to kind of take his game to the next level, is become, I think, more of a creator for himself, because we've seen he's a very good passer, especially in transition, because he's just so quick. And he just from all these weird angles, almost like a Patrick Mahomes little sidearm thing, this little dump off. It's very impressive. He's also been a nice shooter when he gets to set up, but to really unlock that next level, you're going to have to be able to give him the ball and just let him try to cook for a little bit. Now, the Raptors didn't ask him to do that very much, so he didn't really have to. But I think unless he kind of unlocks that, like he'll still have NBA spots and NBA roles in that very specific, with that very specific skill set. To really go to the next level, I think teams just need to see a little bit more aggression, I think is the right word, on the offensive end.
So what happened in one of his last games where he played 18 minutes and didn't put up a shot? That doesn't sound like Dowtin, like even though he is a pass first type player.
Well, the way that the Raptors stagger their rotations is they have a really good starting lineup. I'll give them that ever since they acquired Jakob Poeltl. But the way that he staggers them, he always tries to have guys like Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam usually on the floor alongside Dowtin. So it's the same thing. It's basically the same earlier point where, like, if Dowtin is on the floor with Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes, who are your two of your four best players, you want the ball in their hands as much. So it was mostly just the circumstances he was in. I'm pretty sure if they let him, if they said, you know what, Jeff, get 15 shots a game, I think he could be productive. I didn't see it because they didn't ask him to, and we may never know because now he's probably not going to be around long term with the Raptors.
Yeah. And I have a few questions from Rhody Nation, if you have time for that.
Let's go.
Okay. One person said, is it really true that if the Raptors do not convert Jeff's contract, that he will be a restricted free agent after the season? But if they do convert his contract, he becomes an unrestricted free agent after the season. That sounds backwards, that a team should benefit from not giving a player a full NBA contract. Why would the Players Association accept such an anti-player newcomer rule? That almost sounds like an anticlimactic joke.
That's one of those things where, I mean, I wouldn't agree with it anyway, but yes, if Dowtin is not converted, then it's a restricted free agent deal, which means that the Raptors also have a right of refusal on him, which is very confusing. That seems like one of those things that I know they just agreed to a new CBA, but it's like the union would definitely need to correct that, but it's also one of those minor issues where the union probably didn't want to get into like a protracted argument with the league about a thing like you don't want that to be a holdup for a CBA thing. It's just one of those weird roster quirks where it affects players like Dowtin. It's an unfortunate situation, but hopefully we got to get. Well, no, Kyrie's not in the union anymore. I believe it's Grant Williams is the new president or vice president. Somebody needs to get on that and just be like, yeah, it's anti-player, it's anti-young player, it's anti-developing player. And it seems like something. Again, this is labor negotiations. Anything can happen, but this seems like something the league might eventually correct. But for right now, yeah, Dowtin kind of got the short end of the stick here.
Another question, I know you answered this a little bit. How is Jeff perceived now by Toronto? It sounds like there's a disconnect between the coach and the general manager. I'd like to throw in the players and the fans.
The fans love him.
Really?
They love him. Now, part of it, too, is the energy thing. Part of it is where he came from and the fact that we had 2 draft picks, one of which was a first-round pick, who, of course, you're going to give every opportunity to in order to succeed. And then here comes this little herky-jerky guy from Rhode Island who was kind of bouncing between the G League last year. And then all of a sudden he's proven not only is he better than them, but he's a legitimate NBA player. Like, it's not just comparing it to Flynn and, oh, he's better than Flynn, therefore we like him. Like, there's legitimate positive NBA moments there. So the fans love him. And bringing it back to the initial point, I think Ujiri likes him. I just don't think he liked him enough to, for whatever reason, keep him around. Like, Nurse definitely liked him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing him in the rotation in impactful games. And I think that speaks to the fact. Now, it's just weird because the Raptors, for the last however many years, have been in total lockstep with how to build a team and how to run a team and what they want in players and what they don't want in players. And then now in the last, 3 or 4 months, there's been all this consternation and all this strife and all these different, oh, we need a backup point guard. All right, well, we get Jeff Dowtin. Well, no, because we got this other guy because we need shooting. Well, then why'd you sign this other guy? It's just all this back and forth. It seems like, I made a joke about this on Twitter. It's like Nick Nurse, Bobby Webster, who's the GM, and Masai Ujiri, the president, take turns every month kind of shifting roles. It's like there's no consistency. And because of that, Dowtin ended up, for lack of a better word, he kind of got screwed.
Can you get in that rotation? Preferably this month.
Nah, I mean, I can shoot. That was my one. I
Yeah,
was not good at very many things else when I played. I was smaller, wasn't the best defender just because I couldn't
I
physically
meant
match up
that
with the
this.
kind of guys. I could shoot a little bit.
Well, Mike, I meant the decision-making rotation.
Okay,
Uh,
cut that part out.
uh, well, that would be. I think we know where you would go, and
Holy
so
mackerel. Yeah, if I was in the decision making rotation, holy crap. Keep that little blooper in on the pod. That's fun.
yeah.
If I was in the rotation, yeah, Dowtin is on my team. He is on my team. I don't know what they're so opposed with to give them that, we call it the standard Raptors contract,
Hmm.
which it's a multi-year deal, but it's basically the end of this year and then next year. It's non-guaranteed, and then this happened with Yuta Watanabe, who's with the Nets. He got a similar deal. Justin Champagnie earlier in the year was with the Celtics now. Then when you make the opening day roster, a lot of the guarantees trigger. So essentially, they would have like 5 or 6 different guys who would compete for 3 spots on those deals. That seems perfect for Dowtin. And because he has familiarity, he would definitely have a leg up. Like we saw that with Watanabe and Champagnie when they had these competitions. They both won one of the 3 spots very quickly. So it blows my mind. Like it's not that seismic a move at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
Jeff Dowtin is not going to decide a playoff series. It's just I think that's why I'm more frustrated because it seems like such an easy no brainer move, and they went out of their way not to do it. That's the issue.
It seems like the media has been in accordance with what your take as well. There's been more than one beat writer that shares your opinion as well.
Yes, which I'm actually surprised with. They got a lot of really good beat writers who work really hard, but there also are a lot of there's a lot of pro Ujiri, pro Nurse, pro team guys out there. Now I get why because they've proven it, but it does take a lot for some guys to go for like the really critical angle.
Yeah.
That's why I think this is so like stunning. Like that where everybody in agreement is just like I don't get it.
Yeah.
Not in a fire and brimstone. This is unbelievable. Not that sort of bombastically, but it's just like what? Like they didn't do it? What are you talking about?
Are
That's the
you
vibe I get.
yeah. Do you know how intelligent he is? I'm not talking about I'm talking about knowing parts of the court, remembering certain situations. His mind is like 20 steps ahead of players. Has that been noticed by management or by you? I mean, his mind, he has a incredible mind on the basketball court. He just is another level than them. Has that been captured at all or notated?
Well, I think it goes into the whole playmaking aspect where like you can just tell that this guy like when he gets the ball, even though he plays very frenetically,
Yeah.
typically you associate like there's all guys kicking balls off his feet and turn it over and crazy shots. You don't see it like that. It's very controlled. It's almost like it's
Yeah.
like almost like a snake. Like he's just like waiting up and then just like boom, strikes, goes to the rim. That's the best thing I can compare him to in terms of as a player. And it was definitely noticed. I think that's what helped him kind of win out over Flynn and Banton. Because Malachi Flynn is a much cooler looking player. Like he has crazy handles and hits all sorts of
Mhm.
shots. Sometimes he gets a little full of himself and he's shooting a 31 footer when Pascal Siakam makes 3 shots in a row, and you're like, dude, what are you doing here? And then Delano Banton, who's 6'9", you think could be an amazing defensive point guard, and then every time he'll shoot well in the G League, and then he comes up to the NBA and he's kind of a little skittish with the ball. But Banton hasn't seen the court in God knows how long, so Dowtin very clearly beat him out.
How have you met Jeff at all?
I have
Covered?
not met Jeff at all. I
Yeah.
wish I could, wish I
Yeah.
would, but I don't know how. If there's some way I could, I'd be down for it.
Yeah.
I just hope that this. I hope there's a chance he comes back because I hope that this doesn't sully his opinion of Toronto, and I hope that this whole situation doesn't sully future players' opinions of Toronto. Like if
Hmm.
you're a two-way player, like you will have some options of teams to take that two-way with if you're good enough. I hope that people don't look at this and go, "Well, why would I play for Toronto?" Because Jeff Dowtin was great on there, and then they didn't give him a deal. See, that's the problem. That's the message you're putting out to the league. That's what I don't love.
Well, Mike, I'm anxious to get this up on my podcast. This is a rare thing for me. I came into this podcast not knowing whether he was playing or not, because that's how fast I wanted to get this information up. I'm going to get it up very quickly, and let's get it out there. Maybe it's just breaking news, and it means a lot to Toronto, and it also means a lot to the state of Rhode Island, Rhody Nation, and probably basketball experts that understand all the teams in the league. So thank you so much. Let's stay in touch. Hopefully there's a part two in some way. I'll cross my fingers. It doesn't sound that way, but
well, you never know. If DJ Wilson can get brought back, they could bring Jeff Dowtin back.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Well, great job, and we'll stay in touch and look for the podcast coming up in about an hour.
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay.